Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news as Sir Jim Ratcliffe pledges to put a big bid in for Manchester United. We've also got news around Christian Pulisic and Cody GAKPO, who was talking to the press yesterday about any potential transfers. So a new week and we're hitting it large with Manchester United. And look, I suppose as well, I think I've got to just say from the off that there are a lot of people out there. I've not really picked up on this. Maybe it's naivety. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. I have noticed a lot over the weekend that I wanted to bring in that there's a lot of people out there that are saying Manchester United's share price is a dead giveaway that we've already agreed a sale. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't know what other people think. I mean, I have worked in banking a few years ago. Yeah, share price going up that much could mean that there's a buyer already lined up, but it could also mean that Man United's for sale and they know that a lot of people are going to buy it, and the ownership model of Man United is potentially going to be better over the next 10 years, so people are buying shares. So I don't necessarily think that, but look, maybe we can delve into that a little bit. What we are going to delve into as the headline is Sir Jim ready to big bid for Manchester United. This came in from a French outlet yesterday. Foot Mercato, and obviously he does own Nice, isn't it, in France? So Sir Jim Ratcliffe and French outlets for the last few weeks, months actually, since August, we have had some stories about it, and I think people might not realise why. And obviously he has got a football club in France, so that's probably why you get some stories coming in there. So basically what they're saying is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has refused to get involved in the bids for Liverpool. And the reason for that is that he wants to put in a bid for Manchester United and will put in a bid for Manchester United, and that bid will be a bid that is one that could be accepted by the Glazers. So quite a lot of information there in a very sort of short, succinct way. He will put a bid in. The bid will be one that the Glazers could accept. That in itself is quite interesting, and obviously doesn't want to buy Liverpool, which I don't think is the case. We are going to talk about Pulisic and GAKPO, but I think everyone wants to talk about what's happening with the club first and the bigger story. I put a tweet out yesterday about how it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if in this sale of Manchester United it did become a little bit sentimental. And what I mean by that is I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, think Salford on a bigger scale, really. Salford is the class of 92. They are backed by, I think it's the guy who owns Valencia, isn't it? Is it Peter Lim or something like that? I wouldn't be surprised if there is some sort of sentimental bid attached to ex-players with billionaires involved in it that tries to capture the fans' imagination that this is the best thing, the best thing that can happen to Manchester United. I'll be stunned if that doesn't happen. And the reason I mention that in relation to Sir Jim Ratcliffe is that in August, there was a very, very strong rumour that Sir Jim Ratcliffe did want to buy Manchester United, but that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid did have ex-players attached to it. And the rumour at the time was that it was Gary Neville. Now, it never ever came out, and I don't necessarily think that that's probably true. I don't think that that's necessarily true. Gary Neville's comments over the weekend suggested not a position of confidence. He was saying over the weekend that whoever's going to buy Manchester United, it should be a transparent situation where the fans know who's going to buy and the fans can have a say on it if the Glazers care about the club. Well, that's a big if, isn't it? Do the Glazers really care about the club, Gary? I think 17 years show that they don't. But I agree with him. It would be nice to know who's going to offer. I suppose what I'm trying to delve into here is the headline that Sir Jim Ratcliffe will big bid for Manchester United and who might be involved in that bid, because there was a rumour of players being involved in that. We can talk about that in a moment, but I suppose going back to the headline, I think this week we will get more stories. I think the two big stories this morning are this rumour that Manchester United have already been sold, and obviously this story about Sir Jim Ratcliffe. We need a little bit more clarity. I don't think the World Cup's helping, to be honest. I think the World Cup, I mean, sorry to say, the World Cup is a distraction. It's the biggest tournament in the world every 4 years. But I think the World Cup is taking a lot of journalistic focus away from what is a huge story around Manchester United and Liverpool. I mean, to be honest with you, if the World Cup wasn't going on, we'd be getting a lot more information. There's so many journalists out in Qatar who are living that life, and it takes up a lot of their life. There's a lot of games. So we're not getting as much as we probably would do, because when 75% of the football journalist world is in Qatar, you're losing 75% of journalistic work around what's going on with Man United and Liverpool. However, there is still stuff coming out there, and effectively, look, I go back to the big point for me was Sir Jim Ratcliffe will put a bid in for Manchester United, and he will put a bid in that is a bid that's that's acceptable to the Glazers, or words to that effect. Does that mean he's going to offer 5.75 billion? Because I think that might be acceptable to the Glazers. Or does that mean that he's going to put a bid in that's around 4 billion, which he thinks is acceptable to the Glazers? There's a very different world there. And we've already had a bit of an insight into Sir Jim Ratcliffe when he bid for Chelsea and felt that he was putting the best bid in for Chelsea, but it was nowhere near what Todd Boehly did, because Sir Jim Ratcliffe didn't want to overpay. So is he now going to overpay to get the club he really wants, which is Manchester United? And I think that's going to be the interesting thing. It's a difficult one. I mean, I was listening to Kev and Charlie's video yesterday, and Kev was saying that, he'd like a Sir Jim Ratcliffe who, supports the club, and that's really important. And I think a lot of people feel like that. I think it's so difficult because we don't know who's going to bid, and we don't really have a say in what's going to happen. And we don't know how much information we're going to get. I suppose the second thing I would say is, and a few people have said it, do you think we've already agreed a deal with somebody? I do. I don't want to say that, but I do. My hunch, and I've been saying this for a week, my hunch is that, and it stands out what Jim O'Neill said, who tried to buy the club about a decade ago. He said that, you don't put a club like Man United on the market. That's the sort of club that you don't need to put it on the market. There'll be people who want to buy it without you putting it on the market. So why is it on the market? And I think it's on the market because the Glazers have an offer that they want to accept, but they've just put it out there just to see if anyone else will come in with a bigger offer. So I suppose it depends, like, if United have an offer for 6 billion from an investment fund or whatever, and then you put it on the market, does someone come in and give you 7, or is everyone else going, we'd like to give you 4, in which case the Glazers just go with that? I think they have a buyer lined up. It doesn't mean they'll go with that buyer, but I do think they've got a buyer lined up, and I think it's US based, and that's what I've always thought, and the rumour has always been that. I hope this comes through. Personally, I think he would be a great owner and bring back the good days. Nobody's bigger than United itself. Thank you very much for your super chat there. Do you think this possible change of ownership will change the stance of TeamViewer wanting out, says Rain? I think they want out because they made a mistake sponsoring us. I don't think it's because Man United have been, I don't think it's really because of the fans. I think TeamViewer are just not happy with a lot of their sponsorship deals, really. So yeah, I do think that United, the Glazers have got somebody lined up, and I think if someone's going to come in late, like a Sir Jim Ratcliffe or Dubai or whoever, they're going to have to really overpay. It's a difficult situation, isn't it? It's it's like the house of your dreams is on the market, and they've already got a buyer, and they've already got a very good buyer, and you go and look around the house, and it's on for like £6 million, and you go, I'll give you 5, and they go, well, we've already got an offer for 6. We're only putting it on the market in case someone offers over 6, and you go, shit, I can't buy it then because I think it's overpriced at 6. That's it. I think that's what United have done. I think that's what the Glazers have done. I think they've got the offer they want, and they just want to see if anyone's, I suppose, stupid enough to go above that. I might be completely wrong. I think that's what's happening, and I think it's US based. I suppose the next thing then is we come back to where we were before. How does Sir Jim Ratcliffe get the club if that's what the fans want? How does a Dubai ownership get the club if that's what fans want? And what do fans want? Nobody can speak for nobody. I think with the Glazer out movement, everybody's together. Even though they have different ideas, everybody's together on that. The dangerous area you start walk into is when people think that we need to come together to go for a certain buyer, because what if people don't want that? I mean, already I look on social media and there's a lot of people that want the Dubai ownership model that Man City and Newcastle have got. There's a lot of United fans that want that, and there's a lot of fans that don't want that. So how do you all come together? Because basically you're becoming a dictatorship then. When you've got everybody who wants one thing, the Glazers out, everybody, whether they like each other or not, are like, yeah, Glazers out, go and do this protest, go and target these sponsors. Everybody wants the same thing. It's very easy. You don't need to get on. You can just go, we all agree with this, let's do it for the greater good. But what if there becomes a situation where certain fans want Sir Jim Ratcliffe, certain fans want somebody else, certain fans want the Dubai offer, and then you start getting people saying, well, we're going to protest because we want the Dubai offer. Well, what about the people who want something else? It's going to be really difficult. Which brings me back to what we were talking about before about, Gary Neville. I would agree with him that it would be great if the Glazers could, be transparent about who wants the club and, almost do what's best for the club. But what's best for one fan is not what's best for another, and that's the problem we've got. And in some ways, I hate to say that, but in some ways, the decision being out of our hands might not be a bad thing, because I don't know any United fan that's I don't know a percentage that's 90%. This is what we want. So, imagine a certain section of fan base want one thing and a certain fan base want the other, and one gets one and the other doesn't get the other. It's toxic from the start, because it'd be like, well, you lot voted for this. It's like voting for Brexit, isn't it? You voted for this and now look at the country. Or, yeah, we did vote for this and now look at the country. It's such a difficult thing, because I look at it and I don't, thanks for the super chat, Shane. I don't see a united fan base on one thing. I don't. And as I've said before, I'm not going to start going, I want the Dubai model, I want the US model, I want Sir Jim, I want the class of 92. I'm not going to say any of those things, because everyone's just predicting. Like, what if the class of 92 bought Man United, but they can only just afford to buy United? And then they go, over the next 20 years, we will rebuild the stadium, we're going to make this club non-profit, and we're going to live off our profits. But at the moment, the profits are going to be taken up by trying to, solve major problems. And we're probably not going to win the league for 50 years. I mean, is that what we want? Compared to, yes, we're buying your football club, we are multi-billionaires, we're going to build the best stadium in the world, you're going to win the Champions League in the next 5 years and the league in 3 years, and we're going to win loads of them, and you're going to have the best players in the world. What model do you want? Do you want the model there, or do you want the class of 92 model? Or and I'm only just using them as an example. And there you're going to get fans going, fuck that, I don't want 20 years of a rebuild for non-profit with legends. I want next year we're going to win the bloody league like Newcastle are doing, so it's such a difficult thing, and it's hard to know what to wish for, because I can see the value in lots of different angles. But I suppose I just come down personally. I just come down to, if you had a Sir Jim Radcliffe who bought Manchester United, who's a United fan, who buys it for $6 billion and then pumps $6 billion in the first 2 years, happy days. Because I don't care what he pays for Man United. I care about what he pays afterwards. Is he going to walk in and say, right, I know we spent £50 million on Wan-Bissaka, but nobody wants him, so we're just going to get rid of him. We're just going to write that off. The stadium's going to cost 400 billion, let's just get on with it. This squad needs ripping apart. Let's just spend 200 million on it for the next 3 summers. The fucking recruitment shit, you're all sacked, let's get the best in the world. Now, if whoever, I don't care who the owner is, if they're going to come in with that mentality, it doesn't really matter. That's more important to me than any owner or where they're from. As long as we get an owner that comes in and does the things I've just said there, that's what United needs. That's what we need. Personally, don't want any ex-players involved. Jobs for the boys will kick back in, and Ollie will be back in some capacity, says Lee. Just a sideboard, do you know we have the most players in the World Cup with 15, says Joseph. And hi Mark, I'm from New Zealand and don't know much about Sir Jim. So would he be able to make United the club we want it to be or not, says Joseph. And that's a great question, Joseph. And to which, that's my point. I don't know. Nice aren't winning the bloody French league, and they're not in the Champions League, and they're nowhere near it. He owns that football club. That's being run responsibly. But just because that's being run responsibly doesn't mean that Manchester United would. If I'm honest, I don't care who you are. If you come into Manchester United, buy the club, and then say, over the next 10 years, we are going to be self-sufficient. We're going to have a bumpy ride for 5 years because we've got a massive wage bill. The profits aren't enough to really go and buy the best players in the world. But you know what? We're owned by people who care about the club now, and over the next 10 years, you'll know that. I'll go, I don't give a shit. I don't care about that. That's not going to help us win the league, is it? I mean, I don't want responsible ownership just because I'm shitting on my own vegetables in the garden and eating them. I'm not bothered about that. I'll get my vegetables from Tesco. I'm not bothered about that. That's gone. Football's not that anymore. If people want it to be that, great. There's a club called FC Manchester United, FC in Manchester. They went and set a football club up because they wanted to, and fair play to them. They wanted to move away from the greed and corruption of what the Premier League and Manchester United has become. We don't need Manchester United to be that, in my opinion. I want an owner, and again, I don't care who comes in and says, we are going to have the best stadium, we are going to have the best team, we are going to have the best recruitment department, we are going to get rid of all the shit, and we're going to set high standards, and we're going to battle with Man City from day one. That's what I want as an owner. I don't really care about the background, because what does it matter if the principles are the same? It doesn't matter whether from America, Dubai, Manchester, China. It doesn't matter where they're from. It's about what they're going to do and the promises they're going to make. And I think people are getting locked in with, well, I don't want a multi-billionaire because it feels wrong. I want somebody with an attachment to the club because it feels right. But the one that feels wrong might have a better plan for what United need to do. But we're all speculating because we don't know. I see people on social media telling people what ownership model they need, and we don't even know what the proposed ownership models are. Like, I don't want that owner, I don't want that owner, I want this owner. Well, what's this owner actually promising to do then? We don't know. We don't know, and we may never know. The Glazers might just sell us to someone, and we might not know until they do a statement about what they want to do. I don't know. Leo says that stadium and training ground is going to cost over $1 billion. Look at the setup at Spurs. And we'll become plastic too. We will lose our identity and history, says Lod. Well, you don't know that. What? You don't know that. Why would we become plastic and lose our history if we went with rich owners? Why? Why would we? It's not our fault. It's what the Premier League's created. The Premier League has created a league where if you're not super filthy rich, you can't succeed anyway. So what model is it you want? Do you think you can win the league and the Champions League by living off your own profits? Not a chance. No, not a chance. I'm sorry, you can't compete anymore with that. Morning, Mike. I think if it comes down to pitchforks and torches within the fan base, Sir Jim would win. I think his company have a spare 10 billion. But I don't think it should come down to that. I don't think it should come down to that because I think that's a dictatorship. I think that's a select few telling the masses what's best for them. And we would need to have a transparent ownership contest. We would have to have an election. We're not going to get that. I think that's what Gary Neville was on about that we need, and I agree with him. United fans deserve to know what each bidder would do with the club, but I don't think we're going to get that information, which is dangerous because then you end up with something like, some people might say, like a Brexit, where there's a load of lies. Like remember the bus, about 300 million going to go to the NHS and all that wasn't even true. We can't, protest and, say this is the best model if we don't know what the models are. And we may never know. That's my problem. That's why I'm keeping an open mind on everything, because ultimately the only thing I want is for Manchester United to end up in a situation where we can compete at the very, very top and provide our fan base with the very, very best. The best stadium, the best infrastructure, the best recruitment team, the best board. Forget the money for a moment. This football club deserves the best. It's worked bloody hard to get where it is. You talk about our identity and our history. That's why we deserve the best. If you go back as far as the Busby Babes, Sir Matt Busby, the Trinity, even the Brian Robsons, the Roy Keanes, the Class of 92, the Rooneys, the Ronaldos, all that history is why we deserve the best, because we've been the best. We're not plastic. If Man United become the best club in the world because we've got a billionaire owner, no one's going to say you're a plastic club. Our history shows why we deserve that. So I want United to be the best. I want us to have the best. I want us to wake up in the morning and know that we've got an amazing manager. We've got an amazing director of football. The board is all on board with actually making us the best football team in the world. That stadium, whether it's Old Trafford being renovated or a new one, is going to be, one of the best in the world. Why have we lost sight of that? Why are we having a conversation about, I don't know whether I want a super wealthy owner because it just doesn't feel right. But loads of clubs have got super wealthy owners. Why shouldn't we have one? If anybody deserves it, we do. Because we are a club that is, one of the biggest in the world. Why should we not be mixing it up with everybody else? Why should we sit back and start growing our own vegetables in our garden and be self-sufficient whilst everyone else is shopping at bloody Harrods? I believe that the best step forward for Manchester United is the best solution for Manchester United to be able to compete with the best teams in the world. We've already wasted 10 years not competing for titles, not being in the Champions League. We've not won a trophy for 5 years. How many more years are we going to waste on this, crusade to be something that I don't think you can be in the modern game? Until the rules change and, the rules makers say you cannot be a club that's owned by super wealthy people, which I don't think will ever happen, you're banging your head against the brick wall trying to be, moral crusaders who win things off their own back. You can't do it. And how moral are Manchester United anyway? Let's be honest. We've got the biggest wage bill in the world. One of the biggest wage bills in football. £350 million a year we pay on wages. You walk around Carrington and tell me why we're paying those wages. So let's not pretend that we're responsible. How have we missed the point with Gary Neville stepping down as Salford CEO? Could he be front to Jim's bid or someone else's, Shane? I'd rather Gary Neville was CEO over Richard Arnold or Ed Woodward. 100%. 100%. I don't think anybody's perfect, and I don't think Gary's anywhere near perfect. I mean, some of his football opinions are questionable. They are. But it would be a step up from what we are at the moment, and who's perfect? So look, if that's the right model for us, I'll back it. You'll back it. I'm not going to dismiss anybody out of hand at the moment. So, as I said, I suspect there is an ex-player thing about to go on, and what ex-player group gets involved in Man United or football more than anybody else? It's the class of '92. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was to happen. But what I would say is, and the danger thing is, and I said this on That's Football last night, and I was talking about punditry, but you can use it with our ex-players, you can use it with anything. What concerns me about sentimentality and ex-players is that, if you think about a pundit on the World Cup today that you listen to, they've probably been paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to go to Qatar to talk about football, yeah? They're watching games of football and they've already got a track record of complete and utter ignorance, and, it's open season that they don't watch football. I was watching the Morocco game yesterday, and one of their midfielders came on, and I was like, he looks really good. Someone in the chat straight away is going, yeah, he prays for Toulouse, he's fantastic. And I'm like, fair play. You've got somebody who knows that level of football. I didn't know that. But I'll tell you what I do know, and I'll tell you what you do know. I knew that Erik ten Hag was one of the best up-and-coming managers in Europe. I also knew he wasn't a flash in the pan. He'd been managing Ajax for years. I knew that Ten Hag was a disciple of Pep Guardiola. I knew that the style of football he played was high line, high possession, attractive football. And anybody who knows anything about football should have known that about Ten Hag. And yet, when we're listening to the TV with ex-players, they're telling us Simeone or Pochettino. That's what worries me. When Solskjaer was doing a crap job, they're saying, well, he should stay. He should stay. And that's what worries me, is you need people in the football club who know football. I don't need it to be an ex-player. It can be the current director of football of Monaco. It can be the current director of football of Leipzig. It doesn't matter to me if they know things like Martinez is not going to struggle because he's 5'10" because he's brilliant in the air. Erik ten Hag's the best manager in Europe for Manchester United, not Pochettino or Simeone. That's the level we want. You can go down the sentimental route, but if we're going down the sentimental route, I'd rather we went for Edwin van der Sar, because at least he knows the modern game. These players are legends, but they're not informed on the modern game to the level that we want at Manchester United. So that's my only concern. Let's get a legend involved, but unfortunately, their recent track record on the modern game doesn't really constitute them becoming a CEO, a director of football. We don't need a big name. We need the best names. That's what is important in Manchester United's future, in my opinion. But that's my only concern. I don't subscribe to the view that a pundit who's played the game knows more than you. And I think they prove themselves every day about that. And just because they're on a big wage, and just because they've got loads of caps, and just because they've won things as a player, I think their opinion on the modern game is lazy at best and worrying at worst. So look, that's my only concern. Emily says, what worries me is not the lack of knowledge, but the lack of willingness to go and get that knowledge, says Emily Derry. You basically, this is an opportunity for Manchester United and us as fans to be the best, to hit the reset button. The Glazers, for many people, didn't look like they were going to go. They're going to go. There's a real opportunity for this football club to reset and in 5 years' time to look back on it and go, look at what we are now. We've got the best of this, the best of that, the best of that. Ultimately, if you want to be successful in football, you need the best of everything. The best stadia, the best team, the best manager, the best director of football, the best board, the best training facilities, the best youth setup, the best women's team. That's very easy. If that is your aim to be the best, you don't get locked up in nepotism or favouritism or the past. You get locked up in the best. If you've got two people going for your director of football job and one of them played for the club and one of them didn't, but the one who didn't is the best one for the job, he gets the job or she gets the job or they get the job. That is the mentality to have. Look at Man City. How many ex-Man City players are on the board, are in the coaching setup, are at the training ground, are the director of football? I don't think they've got any. Look at Newcastle. How many have they got? Have they rang up Alan Shearer and gone, Alan, do you want to be the CEO? Do you want to be the director of football? No, because they're going down that business model of being the best. And that is, for me, the top thing. I don't want to get locked in on sentimentality. I don't want to get locked in on location. I want to get locked in on who's going to offer us the best of everything. Who's going to walk in that club and say, from top to bottom, we're recruiting or building the best. That's what I want. And I don't know who's offering that at the moment. So I'm not going to jump into the Sir Jim Ratcliffe camp or the Dubai camp or the US camp or any other camp because I don't know what people are offering. I just hope whoever buys Man United, because it's going to be up to the Glazers, has that best of the best mentality. That's my only stance at the moment. And I think it's futile and naive to start championing any bid because you don't know the detail of it. I don't know if you talked about it yet, but why on earth are we going for Pulisic, says Karish. Well, we're going to move on to that now. Thanks everyone who's been getting involved in everything else. Make sure you smash a like on the video. Get your comments in below. Every video we've done so far that we've spoken about the ownership, the comments have been really good. So I'm really interested to see what people think. And maybe I think that's what it's all about, thinking, isn't it? Thinking for yourself. Thinking for yourself and not jumping on the masses. You'll see a lot of people going, oil me up and this, that and the other, but you don't know what even if there is an offer that's based from the Middle East, that might be very stereotypical to say it's about oil anyway. You don't know what the background of that wealth is, but what is the plan? What is the motive? That's the most important thing. We can't act like an old family shop, have to move forward, or the history is all that we will represent. I want to be the best club again and that's it, says Seb, and I agree with you on that one. So, bit of football news. Cody GAKPO, we spoke about him yesterday morning, and basically he's come out and clarified what we were talking about yesterday morning. He's totally focused on the World Cup. Obviously, he's aware of interest, but he's totally focused on the World Cup, and why wouldn't he be? And there is no conversation going on at the moment. The only thing I would add to Cody GAKPO is that we don't need to do a lot of work on that because we did a lot of work in August. He does want to come to Manchester United. He has got the same agent as Erik ten Hag, and Erik ten Hag wants him to come to Manchester United. So the main work with Cody GAKPO would be, in my opinion, was that we've probably got a nod that he would come to Manchester United to crack on and talk to PSV. You're doing a great job, says Ibrahim. So I think with Cody GAKPO, we're not going to get to a point in the next 2 or 3 weeks where it's deal done. But what we can do is what we should do is be speaking to PSV, because PSV aren't at the World Cup. So we should be in negotiations with PSV at the moment about what they'd be willing to sell for. Can we negotiate that price down? Now, what PSV may well do is say, we're not agreeing anything at the moment, because if he scores a hat-trick in the semi-final of the World Cup, then his price has just gone up by 15 million. So we might have to wait until mid-December anyway, which is the logical thing to do. But, I like GAKPO and I think he'd be a good signing. The more interesting story yesterday came from Mark Ogden in the ESPN, saying that Manchester United don't really want to be active in the January transfer window, but with Ronaldo leaving, they know they have to be. He seemed to be pushing the dialogue that United are looking for something a little bit more short term, that they might try and wait till the summer to go for the striker that they want, Harry Kane. I'm telling you, I've got 2 hunches at the moment. One that United have basically already sold to US, and 2 that we're going to go for Harry Kane in the summer with 1 year left on his contract. I might be wrong on both, but they are a hunch. But what Mark Ogden was saying is that United are fully aware they've got to do something in January, and therefore something short-term might be what they do. Well, Christian Pulisic has been mentioned because, and he's been mentioned as a potential loan deal. Doesn't really work. Doesn't really work for United because he's not a striker. He's another winger or a number 10. It doesn't work, and it won't happen. He may well be on a list. He may well have been considered, but there's like a 5% chance of that happening. It won't happen. He's a Chelsea player. Chelsea will not give us a player that might come to us, and we're already ahead of Chelsea. Chelsea want to be in the Champions League. They're not going to give us a player that might help us get in the Champions League. That won't happen for a start. Secondly, why would United loan in Pulisic and pay him a good wage when we don't need that profile of player? I'm not saying he's a bad player. I like Pulisic, and also obviously he's got his injury concerns, but it just won't happen. It's not a logical deal for Man United. He can't play up front. It's just not gonna happen. So I don't really know what to add about that. I prefer Gakpo than Vlahovic, and we turn Gakpo into a world star, not like Vlahovic, who's already got bought by Juve to be their star. So Sihan. And asking out of curiosity, were Glazers' problem since day one, or were they good at first and deteriorated slowly or exponentially? I'm a Red since 2008, says Shabs. I mean, it's a good question. You know, it's never a bad question if you don't know the answer. And nobody should turn their nose up at that because you don't know the age of the person asking that question. They might be 14, they might be 16, so they wouldn't have any knowledge of what happened. I've always said that I was very ignorant to the sale of Manchester United, because at that time in my life I had a lot, I was watching Man United, I was going to Old Trafford, but I wasn't as in depth as I am now. There were greater people than me who at the start of this knew it was a mistake and were trying to stop it. Unfortunately, they were the minority. We'd been discussed about selling Manchester United way before the Glazers. Sky tried to get hold of us, Murdoch tried to get hold of us, and it was basically stopped by the Premier League, I think it was, who said it would be a monopoly if somebody who owns Sky, who had the Sky TV rights, owns Manchester United. If that had happened, our future would have been very, very different. Whether that, in fairness, maybe it would have been wrong for Man United to be bought by Sky and the Murdoch Corporation. Maybe it would have given us a monopoly, but in honesty, I think it would. I think we would have won a lot of Champions Leagues, and I mean, we won a lot of titles anyway. The Glazer thing, the backstory of it, I'm the wrong person to ask, but I think a lot of people knew it was a bad thing. And actually, if I remember rightly, when United did get bought by the Glazers, I think a lot of people thought it was going to go wrong quicker than it did. Because if you think about it, we did win 3 Premier League titles and a Champions League in the early years of the Glazers. But we all know why. The infrastructure Sir Alex Ferguson had built for the previous 20 years, he could live off until he retired. We did start to fall off. We didn't compete in the Champions League really. When Ronaldo left, we didn't really compete in the Champions League because we were nowhere near. I know we got to 2 finals, but we were nowhere near Barcelona and we couldn't compete with them. In the Premier League, we started to slip. Man City had won one with the Aguero moment. We did win it with Van Persie, but it was close. We were starting to slip from day one under the Glazers, really. And I'd say what the Glazers did is, yes, we won titles at the start, but if you're at the top of the mountain, we started to slip. And when you're at the top and you start to slip, you're still at the top for a little bit, but we were only ever heading one direction. And basically, the Glazers was like that. It's just gradually gone down and down and down and down, and it's never really come back. Our history was created by legends and can never be destroyed, says Legend. A new stadium and new owners can never rewrite a legacy like Manchester United, says Legend. I just think, going back to what we were talking about, we're operating in a world. You've got to operate in a world that you operate in, haven't you? If you like playing tennis, and your racket and your shoes, you've been buying the same ones for 20 years, and then you start playing against people who've got a new racket with new technology and new trainers that make them move around the court quicker. Are you going to continue to use the same racket and trainers you've been using for 20 years? Or are you going to upgrade to what everyone else is using to make you a better player? You can be stubborn and go, look, I've won titles with this racket and I've won titles with these trainers. But then someone gets in your ear and goes, yeah, but even at your best, the technology they're using, you can't compete. But if you use what they're using with the talent you've got, you will beat them. I don't want to. I want to keep using the same racket because that's my legacy. That's what I'm all about. And I think that's the mindset that is a little bit out there still. People are going, no, we want to do it our way. Like Ollie says, adapt to survive. There is still a mentality. We want to do it our way. We want to do it the United way. But the United way has always evolved. It's always adapted. Sir Alex Ferguson never played for Manchester United and generated a new United way. Ten Hag never played for Manchester United, and I believe he can adapt and create a new United way. Evolution is happening in football, whether we like it or not. There is no blueprint to success from the past because there isn't. You can't go back to the past and go, well, that worked, let's use that. It can't. We've tried it. It won't work. We've got to find our own path. And unfortunately, the new football world is the football world of the PSGs, the Man Cities and the Newcastles. And I know it and you know it. And this is the biggest lesson. You know for a fact, I know for a fact, Newcastle are going to be in the Champions League and they're going to stay there and they're going to win the league. Why they're going to do that? Because of the wealth they've got behind them. I think they've just took Man City's head of recruitment. They took someone from Brighton who was very good at recruitment. They're doing exactly what I think we need to do. They're not just going and buying Kylian Mbappe. They are the infrastructure of Newcastle. They're copying Man City. They are going around buying, recruiting the best in class. And that's the model now. That's what people are doing. Newcastle are not going anywhere. Man City are not going anywhere. That's 2 spots in the top 4 gone. If we want to be in there, we've got to be able to compete with them. And if you want to compete with them, you've got to have the best of the best. And if you want the best of the best, you've got to have the funds to do it. Would you mind Mbappe as a signing if the new owners wanted him, says Oscar? I mean, that's a different conversation. We can't buy Mbappe at the moment. I wouldn't mind I wouldn't mind it being an option. You know what I would like? I would like to be in 2 years' time, know that this football club can buy Mbappe if it wants. I want to be in a situation where I know that we can go and knock on the door with competence. And it's not just having the money, by the way. United's reputation in the transfer world is a circus. It's a joke. We knock on the door, and if Man City are there, they go, what are you going to say? We're rubbish. We want the best in class to knock on the door. I want to be in a position where I know we could buy Mbappe, and then I want to be in a situation where we debate it and go, we shouldn't buy Mbappe, or we should buy Mbappe. That's the debate. But we've got to get to that point. At the moment, we can't even get through the gates. We haven't got the funds. We haven't got the expertise. That we need to be in that position, and then we can debate whether we should buy Mbappe. Chelsea are going to do another Kevin De Bruyne with Pulisic, says Ray. And Pulisic would be a bad deal, says Fidels. These people who make such rumours are really ignorant about football. How can we sign Pulisic when we have no striker with a lot of wingers? Exactly. The Pulisic story yesterday, it was only because it came from Mark Ogden that I actually took notice of it. Otherwise, it's the sort of thing that you expect to see on... well, I'm not even going to be dismissive enough to banter people like that. But yeah, it's only because it came from him. But look, I can't see it. DNA says, have we got a Serbia watch-along, Mark? We have. So 4 watch-alongs today. It's a big day in the World Cup, as you may know. It's the last day of the 4 kickoff times of 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock. From tomorrow, it goes to 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock, which means that the 10 a.m. show comes back tomorrow because we've been at 9 o'clock for the last week because of the 10 o'clock games. So tomorrow we're back at 10 o'clock in the morning, which is great. Unfortunately, the 8 o'clock at night show still is at 9 o'clock now because we've still got 7 o'clock kickoffs for the World Cup, but it's starting to change a little bit. So yes, make sure you tune in for our watch along. We've done every watch along on the World Cup so far. We've got 4 for you today. It's Ronaldo at 7 o'clock tonight against Uruguay. It's Brazil at 4 o'clock today against Switzerland. I think that'll be a good game. And we're starting off with Serbia. Serbia will be playing... Who was Serbia playing? Is it Cameroon? Serbia-Cameroon at 10 o'clock. So, yeah, get yourself over there on That's Football and we'll continue the chat there. But really enjoyed the show this morning. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe. There was a really good video that went up last night with Kev and Charlie talking about what business model they would like. I think it makes a very interesting viewing based on what we've just been discussing there. So give it a watch as well. And yeah, get over to the watch-alongs and we'll speak to you over there. Obviously, we're back at 9 o'clock tonight live and we may well have something coming up for you at 3 o'clock today. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, I've got Fabrizio on the show. So we'll have a good, thorough dive into all the latest transfer news in and out. It feels like we need to do that as well. So we've got Fabrizio at 2 o'clock tomorrow as well to look forward to. And we'll see what the week brings on ownership, because I can guarantee you there are going to be some developments. And I think for me, it's just about keeping an open mind. Why would I go, I want this, or I want that, or I want that, or I want that, when I don't know what they are offering? That's the thing for me. Speak to you in a bit. Take care.